Today we cover stories going outside of the United Kingdom: America, Ukraine, Asia, Africa, the world. This is the world's Newsround. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with our very first episode of the world's Newsround. News looking at we're outside of the United Kingdom. And we've got a couple of stories I'm going to be covering from Ukraine first before we go beyond those shores. So the first one here from Al Jazeera. The headline is that Ukraine, Russia reports downing dozens of drones over Kiev, Crimea. The extent of damage and casualties from the rival attacks in Kiev and Crimea is not immediately clear. So the conflict is still ongoing, as we are all well aware, in the war in Ukraine. And it appears that there have been, I have not seen any recent reports, but there have been a few attacks towards Crimea, but nothing really significant. But we have a few stories to look at anyway. So let's dive into this first one. It's a short one, but we'll go right into it. So Ukraine has reportedly downed more than 24 Russian drones over the country's capital, Kiev, as Russia's defense ministry announced the destruction of 8 Ukrainian drones near the annexed Crimean Peninsula. The extent of damage from the rival attacks early on Sunday was not immediately clear. So really, the only way really they can get some attacks down on Crimea, they have tried some boat attacks, I believe, but they've not really gone well. So drones seem to be the most logical attack. Ukraine have used drone attacks on Russian and in actual Russian territory, not just in the Ukrainian occupied territory by Russia, but actually they've used drones as well in several attacks, including even in Moscow. There's been 1 or 2 attacks, allegedly. I would say allegedly, because it could have been the case that some of them are a bit propaganda as well from Russia's side, which is a bit interesting to say the least. But yeah, been using a lot of drones, Ukraine, that is for sure. The Kiev mayor Vladimir Klitschko said that at least 1 person was wounded in the city's historic Podgin neighborhood, and a fire broke out near one of its parks. The debris from the downed drones fell on Darkhanivsky, Samaritsky, Sheskovitsky, Sarkovolshitsky, and the Poldyg district, Klitschko and the city administration had said. I'm going to be getting my words and name mixed up, so if I mispronounced any names throughout any of today's show, I sincerely apologise. In the Sheskovitsky district, debris sparked a fire in an apartment which was quickly extinguished. There were no immediate reports to injuries, Sergei Popkin, the head of Kiev's military administration, said in a Telegram messaging app. One of the quickest ways that normally news seems to get out in Ukraine is basically Telegram. On both Ukraine and Russian sides, they seem to get most news media outlets get their sources straight away from Telegram, from messages that they send out, whether it's generals, soldiers on the front line, that kind of thing. This seems to be the quickest way where information is kind of trickled out of what's going on, not just to those actually being on the ground there reporting on the what's going on. Drones entering the capital in groups from different locations. Air defensive drones managed to destroy more than 24 enemy UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles, Popko said, adding that the exact number would be announced by Ukraine's air forces. The AFP news agency said at least 10 explosions were heard over Kiev. There was no immediate comment from Russia about the attacks. The Russian Defense Ministry, however, said the country's air defense system destroyed 8 Ukraine-launched drones over the Black Sea near the Crimean Peninsula. The ministry said in a statement on Telegram it did not immediately say if there were any damages or injuries. There was no immediate comment from Ukraine. So there's still the use of them, that is for sure, carrying on the attacks. Yeah, as I said, drones are still being used there, and it's not really a surprise that they're still continuing to use them. I mean, it's much more efficient than throwing away lives, that is for sure, guys. So we're going to go from Al Jazeera, and we're going to have a look at the Kiev Post, one of a number of sources with regards to conflict within the Ukrainian war. This one here, the headline is that Moscow says this is we don't know if this is absolutely true, because this is just something that Moscow are claiming, but I think it's just have a look at it anyway. So I've talked about, yes, there have been some obviously offences by Ukraine into Crimea, possibly by boat. And Moscow are saying that they've destroyed 3 Ukrainian speedboats in the Black Sea. Last month, Ukrainian special forces had landed on the western part of the peninsula before leaving without casualties, according to Ukraine's military intelligence. Now, Russia said on Sunday that it had destroyed 3 military speedboats carrying Ukrainian soldiers in the Black Sea, in which Moscow claims they were heading towards the annexed Crimea. In the western part of the Black Sea, naval aviation of the Black Sea Fleet destroyed 3 military One Sea Force speedboats, which are US made and were carrying Ukrainian armed forces, the Russian Defense Ministry said on Telegram. The boats were heading in the direction of the Crimean Peninsula, annexed by Russia in 2014, according to the statement. The Russian army said in a separate statement that 8 Ukrainian drones were shot down by its air defences over Crimea and another in the Baskets region near the Ukrainian border. On August the 24th, Ukraine said it had carried out an operation on the Crimean Peninsula where it raised its national flag. Ukrainian special forces had come from the sea, landing on the western part of the peninsula before leaving without casualties, according to Ukrainian military agency. So that's really all that we know. It's pretty much, they've claimed that 3 Moscow have claimed that's happened. There hasn't been, as of the time of recording, there have been an official response from Ukraine with regard to potential lives lost there. So it's a case of maybe there have been, maybe there haven't been on that one. So it's an interesting one to say the least there. But obviously I'll try to keep updated with conflicts that are going on in Ukraine with regards with short videos throughout the week. Yeah. The next one from Ukraine, this is the last one. It's not so much about the conflict on the ground. It's more about funding, really. So this one from the Kiev Independent. This is one of the websites that I use quite a lot, when it comes to news sources. So the headline from the Kiev Independent here is that South Korea have pledged $2.3 billion in aid for Ukraine. That's a lot of money to pledge, especially for a country like South Korea. 2.3 billion is a lot of money. Let's read into it a little bit. So South Korean President Yoon Shin-yeol, if I've mispronounced, I apologise again, pledged 2.3 billion in aid for Ukraine to help the country rebuild itself and provide humanitarian support for those who need amid Russia's ongoing full-scale war, Seoul-based news agency Yonhap reported on September the 10th. South Korea will provide the first 300 million as a humanitarian aid in 2024, and the rest will be given to Ukraine as long-term, low-interest loans throughout the country's aid fund, the Economic Development Cooperation Fund, the EDCF, according to Yonhap. This will demonstrate our responsible role as a global pivotal state in leading assistance for the restoration of peace in Ukraine and lay down the foundations for our fully fledged participation in Ukraine's future reconstruction, an unnamed presidential official told Yonhap. In July, Young visited Kiev for the first time to meet his Ukrainian counterpart Vladimir Zelensky. During the visit, Young, whose country's policy bans the exports of arms to a country at war, said that Seoul would expand the scale of the non-lethal military supplies from last year, when we provided materials such as helmet and bulletproof vests. He also announced 115 million humanitarian aid for 2023 at a press conference with Zelensky. Now, according to a Wall Street Journal published in May, South Korea, the 8th largest arms exporter worldwide, is transferring hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds to Ukraine through the US under a confidential agreement. Neither Seoul nor the White House responded to requests for comment from the WSL, that's the Wall Street Journal there. So, more money being given to Ukraine to help with the conflict. South Korea is pledging its part there, from the looks of it there. I mean, it's like the problem is that it's all good, this sounds all good for Ukraine and that, but there's still a huge amount of corruption taking place in Ukraine, as we've reported stories here before, as well as other news outlets and YouTubers have reported as well. There is still a great deal of corruption within Ukraine, so there's obviously that fear that the money that's being used to help and aid Ukraine will end up falling into the wrong hands. It's down to Zelensky and those who are truly loyal to him to ensure that corruption is stamped out and the money is used wisely, especially with the country's very existence under threat. That is for sure. So we are going to move away from Ukraine and we're going to look at a bit much more of a longer story here, guys. So one of the things I've covered over the number of months on the channel is obviously the crisis that has taken place in Sudan. Sudan does not seem to be an end in sight over there, and we're going to be looking at an article here from Middle East Eye. Just before I do, if you can hit the like button and share across social media if you can, it'd be greatly appreciated, guys. So the headline here, this is from Middle Eastern Eye, is that from Sudan, Darfur atrocities have turned isolated Nyala into a lifeless city. This is not for the faint-hearted. I'm just going to put that out there right now. As fighting escalates to cut off the RSF supply lines from the CAR, civilians find themselves in the crossfire again. Sudan's Niger has been turned into a ghost town as fighters are accused of committing atrocities against civilians, with dozens of people feared death. Several witnesses and activists who spoke to Middle Eastern Eye described seeing scenes of horror in the South Darfur city since early August. They reported mass killings, sexual violence, looting of homes, attacks on health facilities, destruction of telecommunication towers, and the suspension of water and electricity services. After nearly a month of intense fighting, there is almost no sign of life in the city, they said, with markets shut down and thousands of people forced into displacement. There was sporadic fighting in Niger after the conflict began on April 15th between the Sudan Armed Forces, the SAF, and the former allied the paramilitaries Rapid Support Forces, the RSF. See, this conflict is incredibly, I would say it's quite, let's say, careless, because really this is a very vicious war. This is taking place in Sudan, and they really, both sides have. I mean, the RSF have been accused of quite a lot of horrendous acts, a lot more than the Sudan Armed Forces. The RSF have been accused of some absolutely despicable atrocities, to be fair, but it's not been confirmed by them. They have denied the possibility of raping several women of rape and assaults on civilians. There has been those accusations. They are allegations, I must stress, on the Rapid Support Forces. More that I think has been taking place in Khartoum, in the capital of the capital of Sudan. And there have been many instances of people not being able to get supplies that they need. Humanitarian aid has been incredibly difficult for the UN to get aid in there. The United States and Saudi Arabia have tried to break some kind of ceasefire, and whenever they've been temporary ceasefires to at least allow some aid to get in, but they've not lasted very, very long. Both sides really having no intention of stepping down. And as at the time of this recording, seems to be no sign of any kind of ceasefire as of yet. And it was quite a shame too, because we had a video covered about how this all kind of started in the first place between them, and there's been a long history here. And you'd like to think at some point there would be peace, but it doesn't appear that it's going to be that way for quite a while, sadly. But battles have become more aggressive and extended into the heart of the city last month, but have continued since. Civilians have been caught in the crossfire, but with the internet and phone lines cut off, it is little known about the scale of violence that have endured. The city is isolated and the crimes are ongoing silently with cold blood. Amir Gullah, a Nyala-based activist who now fled the city, told MEE. The only way news is getting out is through bus passengers and drivers who have only been able to leave from time to time, or via those who have managed to flee. On August the 15th, a bomb fell on our house, killing my father and wounded two of my sons, said Adam Ister, who lived in Al Sain neighbourhood located in the northern part of the city. His home, like many other civilian houses in Nyala, had been shelled, forcing him to flee. I walked for hours carrying my wounded kids to the Belegar locally, where I'm now living with my extended family, he told Middle Eastern Eye. The United Nations says more than 50,000 people have fled Nyala in the first 5 days of the latest wave of violence. The number is likely much higher. I'm pretty sure that the country as a whole has had at least more than 2 million, if not more, much higher probably. People have fled the country since the conflict. It's probably a lot higher than that, but yeah, quite a huge amount of people have fled into neighbouring countries around Sudan to avoid this conflict. Mohammed Hassan, who recently fled Nyala to Koski City, said he witnessed dozens of bombs hitting civilian homes. This has led to the killing of hundreds of people, he told Middle Eastern Eye. However, the exact number of casualties have been difficult to pinpoint. The UN said at least 60 people have been killed and 250 wounded at the start of the renewed clashes between the 11th and the 17th of August. At least 42 civilians, including women and children, were hiding under a bridge when they were killed in a massacre on the 23rd of August, according to Darfur Network for Human Rights, the DNHR. The NGO said there were other reports of similar massacres which are happening as both sides launch indiscriminate attacks using artillery fire and airstrikes. Earlier in August, militias believed to be aligned with the RSF attacked members of the Darfur tribe in the Kyiv area, killing several people, the DNHR had said. The mass killing happened after tribesmen refused to release their cattle to the militiamen at no cost. When there's no law and order and you're the one carrying the weapon, you can get away with anything. The militia fired live bullets at cattle keepers, causing several wounds, mitigation of civilians into different directions at the death of 10 herders, the DNHR said in a report. Hassan, who worked as a lawyer, told MEE that similar attacks by RSF forces and their allied militia are the main cause of the people's displacement. Some parts of the city have witnessed brutal attacks by the RSF and its militias, including the neighbourhood of Texas, Kearney and other southern parts of the city, he said. Yeah, see, as I said, the RSF, of course, have been accused of quite a few things, and this is kind of adding more into it. They're handling themselves of this conflict really cold-blooded, shall we say. I think it's the right word to probably describe what's being pictured here by the RSF. I can say that the majority of houses in the city have been looted by the RSF and its allied militias, he added. The atrocities in Nyala are not the first to be reported in Darfur and the ongoing war, which has reignited ethnic violence in the southern Sudan region. El Janeiro, the West Darfur state capital, was the centre of suspected extrajudicial killings, sexual violence and other crimes in June, which prompted a war crimes investigation by the International Criminal Court, the ICC. Now it seems similar crimes are being committed in Nyala. So this is the latest battlegrounds. So military sources, like many others, preferred to be unnamed because of safety concerns, told Middle Eastern Eye that attention turned to Nyala as warring parties fight for control of the border region with South Sudan and the Central African Republic, the CAR. It is believed that the RSF is getting weapons smuggled into Sudan via CAR through its allies abroad. Another source who spoke to MEE over a satellite phone from a locality near Nyala said the RSF occupies the majority of the city while the army is fighting from its barracks around it. The army is attacking RSF positions using intense airstrikes, sometimes coming from outside the state as well as strong artillery shelling, the source said. But the RSF still has the upper hand since it controls most of the city. It's not really too much here to read here on the map. So this is north. You can see the country Sudan, and then there's North Darfur, which is in a bit shade. Then there's South Darfur, which is in a much darker shade there, and you can see Central African Republic there in the bottom left-hand corner screen, and that's where they appear to be getting supplies in. And Nyala, as you can see, is just a bit north of in South Darfur there, just to kind of paint a bit more of a geography picture for us there. On the 21st of August, the army said its commander in the infantry division in Nyala, Yosefia Faderica, was killed in unclear circumstances. Reports suggest he was killed by a member of his staff. Gulita, an activist who had been monitoring developments in Nyala, told Middle Eastern Eye the worst violence is happening in the neighbourhood of Al Jabiya, Al Ghazia and Al Hala Digara, where hundreds of bombs have fallen on houses. Meanwhile, battles have also raged along the Sudan-CAR border. Opposition CAR sources says the Russian Wagner mercenary group has been sending weapons to the RSF through the AM Darfur border town. I had suspected that that Wagner may be. I had my suspicions, considering how much influence Wagner has in several African countries. This does not surprise me whatsoever. That Wagner may be playing some kind of outside role, not a direct role, but an outside role in this conflict, and it appears to be the case. The sources added that the SAF has launched heavy air raids in and around Darfur to cut off the ISF supply lines. No medicine or aid. As fighting shows no signs of abating, health workers in Nyala warned the health system is near in total collapse. Two medical sources, including one volunteer, told MEE that people have been dying because of a lack of medication in the city and the difficulty of evacuating them. The situation is crumbling. We have seen people bleed to death or forced to stay at homes without help as they fear coming to the hospitals, one of the sources said. Only one hospital, the Nyala Sudan Turkish Research Hospital, and some small clinics remain operational in the city. There is a lack of medicine and medical staff. Some facilities are being operated by volunteers, one of the sources told MEE. The militias are everywhere. They even attack the hospitals and force the volunteers to treat RSF members, one of the volunteers added. Yeah, just horrible situation for them. Meanwhile, those who managed to flee the city are moving into under-equipped makeshift camps which lack basic services. Gulcha said thousands of people have made it to internally displaced person camps in Kyiv, which is already home to 1,000 more who were displaced during the 2003 Darfur conflict. Located in the Balagal locality east of Nyala, camps near Kyiv are seen as relatively safer than the city. But the humanitarian situation is disastrous, Gula said, because of overcrowding and lack of food and health service. The people in Kyiv are starving because of a lack of food and water and shortage of everything from health service to access to latches, Gulio told MEE. Esker, who lost his father in the shelling before he fled with his family to Six in Belgorod, described similar issues he has to face. There is no work, no money, and very little food and services here, he said. There is no help from the government or aid organisers, neither of which have access to the entire state. Yeah, not good, guys. More suffering. More as a result of it, and it's just a horrible situation, guys, for those in Sudan. I'd like to think that the UN can do more. I like to think that more powerful nations would do more, but it appears to be something on the priority list, it doesn't appear to be something that's on the priority list, to be fair, which is a real shame because it is an issue that needs to be dealt with because people are dying every single day out there, not just from the war itself, but from malnutrition, from health, simple basic services, basic things that they need as a necessity to survive as humans. And yeah, it's pretty horrible. But I will try to keep up to date with what's going on in Sudan as much as I can, guys. So we move from the conflict in Sudan to one that's kind of, I'm sure people have heard about this, but I've not really covered it for a while. This is from CNN, guys. Obviously, there was a powerful earthquake that took place in Morocco. Rescuers are scrambling to find the survivors in Morocco after a powerful earthquake killed more than 2,000 people. This 2,000 people, guys, is pretty horrible, to say the least. Rescuers in Morocco are battling to find survivors from Friday's powerful earthquake with more than 2,000 people killed, and remote villages near the epicenter left in ruins. Terrified Moroccans spent a second night in the streets, too afraid to return to their homes. 3 days of mourning are underway following the country's deadliest earthquake in decades. The 6.8 magnitude quake struck late on Friday. It was also the strongest to hit the region around the ancient city of Marguerite in a century, according to the US Geological Survey. So far, 2,012 people have been listed as killed and 1,404 others critically injured, according to Moroccan authorities. But the toll is expected to rise further as rescuers dig through the rubble and collapse houses in remote areas of High Atlas Mountain. In historic Marguerite, the largest city near the center of the quake and a major tourist draw, Many families spent Saturday night staying out in the open as authorities warned residents to pay close attention to aftershocks. Hamali, 53, slept in central Maki Park with her entire family, including little children. She said she got it cold at night, so they stayed together. Everybody was outside, all the neighbours, everyone. We don't want to go inside, everyone is scared. The shaking was so strong, she told CNN. People stayed away from the damaged buildings in the city's tightly packed Medica Centre, as well as surrounding red earth walls where the parts have crumbled. In the Olivine Park in central Maki, hundreds of people, including children and the elderly, slept on blankets and makeshift mattresses. Families huddled together trying to get some rest after the shock and panic from the night before. Some bought bags of clothes and food, preparing for a possible longer stay away from their homes. Morocco's King Mohammed has issued instructions to set up a commission for relief service to provide care, housing and food to those who are affected. He has also ordered mosques nationwide to hold funeral prayers known as Jahada's prayers at noon at Sunday for those who killed. Flags around the city are flying at half-mast to mark the 3 days of national mourning announced by the monarchy. In Makari's airport, dozens of tourists slept on the floor in the main terminal waiting to catch a flight out. Flights in and out of the tourism hub have been operating mostly as normal. Scenes of destruction and despair have also played out in villages dotting the foothills of the Atlas Mountain where the quake was centered. The remote area of the highest number of fatalities, with homes made from mud, bricks crumbled onto residents and boulders blocking roads from rescue teams to arrive. Aerial footage shows villages perching on sloped flattens, reduced to piling of rubble in the aftermath of the quake. Fatima, 50, told CNN her house in the mountain village of Aski had been destroyed. I barely got the chance to grab the kids and run out before I saw my house collapsing in front of my eyes. The neighbour's house also collapsed and there are 2 dead people under the rubble, she said. Mohammed, 50, from the nearby town of Oregon, lost 4 family members in the quake. I managed to get out safely with my 2 children but lost the rest. My house is gone, he said. So we got a map here. So this is let me see if I can just bring up, yeah, here we go guys. So this is powerful earthquake that rocks central Morocco. It was a 6.8 magnitude earthquake that struck in Morocco's high Atlas mountain range at 11:11 p.m. local time on Friday, September the 8th here. And you can see here, so they've got on the here from light to very strong of the quake, and you can see quite a devastating there. So you can see where it's highlighted, the epicenter of where it struck, and how it's kind of ricocheted all the way out from there. A significant amount of damage it has caused there, guys. Pretty devastating to say the least. The source is from a US Geological Survey, that source of that map, guys. Rescue operations there are ongoing. We are out in the streets with authorities there to try and pull the dead from the rubble. While many people were transported to hospitals in front of me, we are hoping for miracles from the rubble, Mohammed said. In the small town of Mouralain Bahre, footage released by Reuters showed villagers digging through the rubble to pull out bodies. Rescuers are racing against time. The first 72 hours after the quake are the most critical period to find survivors, as the conditions of people trapped and injured can quickly deteriorate beyond that window. They called it the golden period because if you're going to get people out from under the rubble, that's the time to do it, said Joe English, a spokesperson for the UN's Children Fund, the UNICEF. These towns and villages, they're remote, they're hard to reach. International support and solidarity is absolutely critical, he added. Leaders from around the world have extended their condolences to Morocco and offered international aid. France activated an emergency aid funded by local government, while Israel's emergency services geared up to mobilise in Morocco. The United Arab Emirates will establish an air bridge to deliver supplies, and Algeria reopened its airspace for humanitarian aid and medieval flights despite having previously cut off diplomatic relations with Morocco. Turkey is also sending personnel and tents. The World Health Organization said more than 300,000 people have been affected by the powerful tremors in Makarik and the surrounding areas. Not since 2004 has the country seen a comparable disaster, with a 6.3 magnitude earthquake struck in the port city of Al Homiga, claiming around 630 lives. Morocco's worst earthquake of its modern time was in 1960 near the western sea of Algiers, which killed at least 12,000 people. It is never good when disasters like these occur, guys. unfortunately, as well, they are also a natural thing. I don't like to use that word, but they are something that we have. But is it a case of, is this to do with climate change? Could more have been done? I don't think those questions need to be asked right now, but the main thing, the most important thing right now is to get as much aid, much support as we can to the people of Morocco and everyone that's been affected by this. Cover as many bodies as possibly can, and just pray that the death count doesn't rise too high. And my heart goes out to everybody out there. It's pretty horrible to say the least. Guys, we're about halfway through. We have 3 more stories to cover, so it looks like we might not be hitting the full hour, but we'll see how things goes. If you're enjoying the content, so enjoy is not the right word, but if you find the content interesting and fascinating, do hit the like button and share across social media. I do tend to find that world news can be sometimes a bit more downfall than British politics, but I also think it's also that we need to talk about and be highlighted, aware of issues that are taking place around the world, which is why I'm trying to do a sort of world term sort of thing. But let me know come the end of the video in the comments down below what you guys actually think of a world news round, whether I should do it every Monday or not. I'm interested to hear your feedback on that, guys. The next one is from France 24, and it actually goes back to Africa. When I say go back to Africa, we've been covering some in Africa before we wrap up and look at stuff in America. So the headline is, Niger's military has accused France of deploying forces with a view to intervention. So if you guys remember, there was a coup that took place a while back in Niger with the attempts to, it was a successful coup, but they are trying to, many African leaders have condemned the coup. Westerns have condemned the coup. France obviously not happy about it. So what can we know about this recent news? So Niger's coup leaders have accused France of gathering forces, war materials and equipment in several neighbourhood Western African countries with a view to military intervention. So it appears that France are looking to basically put the former president back in power, potentially. So relations, I know the right text is not that big, I do apologise, but I will try to read it out as best as I possibly can for you guys. So relations with France is Niger's former colonial power degraded after Paris stood by ousted President Mohamed Bazoum following the July coup. France continues to deploy its forces in several ECOWAS, that's the Economic Communications of West African States, countries as part of preparation for an aggression against Niger, which is planning in collaboration with its community organisations. Niger's regime spokesperson Colonel Major Amadou Amari said on Saturday. France clearly did not approve of the coup. The Sahel state, which is also embroiled in a standoff with West African bloc, the ECOWAS, which has threatened to intervene military if diplomatic pressure to return Bazoum to the office fails. In his statement, Abarin said France had deployed military aircraft, helicopters and 40 armoured vehicles to Kyiv and Benin. Military cargo aircraft have enabled large quantities of war materials and equipment to be unloaded in Senegal, Kyiv and Benin, to name but a few, he added. The withdrawal of French forces. So on August the 3rd, Niger's coup leaders renounced several military cooperation agreements with France, which have about 1,500 soldiers stationed in the country as part of a wider fight against jihadists. Paris, which refuses to recognise the military regime in Niger, does not consider the soldiers who overthrew the president as the party to those cooperation deals. The military regime, meanwhile, maintains France forces are now illegally stationed in Niger. On Tuesday, a Paris defence military source told AFP that the French army was in talks with the military regime over withdrawing elements of its presence in Niger, confirming comments made by the previous day by the Niger's regime-appointed Prime Minister Ali Morazim Lazim Zeni. Every day for more than a week, thousands of people have gathered in the Nigerian capital Niamey around a military base housing French soldiers to demand their departure. The United States, which has around 1,100 soldiers in Niger, has begun to relocate its troops as a precaution to Niamey at the central city of Algiers, the US Department of Defense said this week. The tug of war. France is engaged in a tug of war with Niger, and he has also withdrawn the diplomatic immunity of French ambassador Sylvain Little and ordered police to expel him. France has refused the demand on several occasions, saying the military regime has no legal right to make such an order. On Monday, however, Zeni said discussions were underway about a very swift departure of French troops, but that his government hoped to maintain cooperation with a country with which he has shared a great deal. He was also hopeful that his country could come to an agreement with the ECOWHF after the coup leaders announced a transitional period lasting a maximum of 3 years. The West African blog said it does not want Niger to repeat the experience of Mali, Guinea and Burkina, which has had to haggle over the duration of conditions of transition periods. Yeah, I mean, nobody really wants military intervention. But at the same time, it's just like when the propaganda that was built up over the time. I mean, the thing is that it was a colonial state under France, and people don't forget. People don't forget their past. You know, I mean, as a British person, we have our own skeletons in our closet, which are much bigger than the French, that's for sure. And I am concerned this may lead to conflict. I don't think this coup was in the best interest of the country and their people, from what I've read and what my knowledge of it. I could be wrong. You could correct me in the comments if you disagree with that. My knowledge obviously is nowhere near as the level of some of you guys probably listening to this, but my fear is that it may lead to some kind of conflict between I'm worried that there may be some military intervention at some point, which is very fearful. I hope not, but it does worry me a little bit, to say the least, guys. Never a good thing, conflicts, guys. I mean, there's already enough conflicts, enough losses of life out there as it is. So, guys, we have 2 more stories to read. Not so much a really long one, this next one here, but both of them do involve America. This is I decided to have a look at this one from Reuters about America. So this one's about the US and Vietnam to boost ties as Biden visits seek China's hedge with chips, rare earths. This one is. So the United States and Vietnam are planning to elevate their relations as US President Joe Biden visits the country from Sunday, with officials saying the focus of the talks will be semiconductors and critical minerals. The US has been pushing for the upgrade for months as it sees Southeastern Asian manufacturing dynamo as a key country in its strategy to secure global supply chains from China-related risks. The overhaul may be shadowed, however, by a report on Saturday that Vietnam was in talks with Russia over a new arms supply deal that could trigger US sanctions. The New York Times cited a March Vietnamese finance ministry document laying out plans for Hungary to pay to modernize its forces through a Vietnamese-Russian oil venture in Siberia. Veterans have seen but not been able to authenticate documents describing talks for a credit facility that Russia would extend to Vietnam to buy heavy weaponry, including anti-ship missiles, anti-submarines, aircraft and helicopters, anti-aircraft missiles, and fighter jets. A spokesperson for Vietnam's foreign ministry did not respond to multiple requests for comment on the documents, which showed Moscow pushing for months for a loan deal that would bypass Western sanctions on Moscow, and Vietnam showing interest. Hungary is in similar talks with multiple arms suppliers, including US, in recent weeks. Vietnam is engaged in several high-level defense meetings with top Russian officials. The upgrade will include a security dimension, John Finner, the US Principal Deputy National Security Advisor, told reporters on Sunday while on a plane with Biden to Vietnam from a Group of 20 summit in India. He said that no arms deal to announce at this stage, but stressed that the US and its partners could offer Vietnam help to diversify away from Russian military supplies, which offer, he said, Vietnam was receptive to. This would help Vietnam reduce military reliance on Moscow, a relationship that we think is increasingly uncomfortable with, Finner said. Well, do we really think Vietnam have forgotten about the history they had with the US as well? It would be quick to, people haven't. I hope we haven't forgotten that history, because that was really one dark history on American soil, having to go to war, went to war with Vietnam over what? What was that all about again? Chips, rare earths. A half a century after lengthy and brutal war, the US is to elevate Vietnam to the same diplomatic tier as China and Russia, Finner noted. As Biden and other US officials have said, Vietnamese officials have shown optimism about the expected upgrade, despite initial concerns over how giant neighbour China would react. Top Chinese officials, possibly including President Xi Jinping, are expected to visit Vietnam in the coming days or weeks, officials and diplomats have said, as Hyundai seeks to maintain good relations with all superpowers. Biden is to arrive at Vietnam's presidential palace on Sunday afternoon for a formal welcome from the Communist Party General Secretary Ni Jinping Tong, Vietnam's most powerful leader, then to go to party headquarters where the two will meet and give their public remarks. The president is scheduled to hold a news conference at 7:30. His visit comes as bilateral trade and investment ties are growing, and a long stimulus territorial dispute between Vietnam and China heats up in the South China Sea, highlighting Vietnam's growing importance as a friend-shoring destination for US technology companies. Executives from Google, Intel, Amar, Marvel, Global Foundries, and Boeing are expected to meet on Monday with Vietnamese tech executives for the Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Hanoi. A lot of tech companies are coming here as well. Interesting. Semiconductors are the centerpiece of an action plan to be adopted during Biden's visit, adding concrete deliverabilities to the diplomatic upgrades, a US official said. Made to see the upgrade as far as symbolic before the Washington already effectiveness has close ties with Hanoi. Besides possible announcements by US corporations, it is unclear how significant the US administration contribution to the sector could be. Having only $100 million a year for 5 years available under the CHIPS Act to support semiconductor chains globally, a large part of it can go to Vietnam, officials said. More support to train skilled workers is also expected as Vietnam faces a major shortage of engineers in the chip sector. Another key issue is strengthening supply chains and critical minerals, especially rare earths, which Vietnam has the world's largest deposits after China, according to US estimates, officials said. Two people were familiar with the plans set in agreements on rare earths were expected during Biden's visit, which end on Monday when he flies back to America. You guys will be watching this on Monday. I'm recording this on Sunday for the record. Details, however, are scant. Past attempts by the US companies to partner with Vietnamese rare earth firms have not succeeded, according to a person involved in one recent plan. Trade may also be discussed as Vietnam trade surplus with the US trails only those of China and Mexico. Human rights remains a controversial issue, with US officials regularly criticizing Hawaii for jailing activists and limiting freedom of expression. Vietnam may show goodwill, with diplomats suggesting activists could be freed. Interesting to say the least. It's a lot of chitter chatter, a lot of talk, really. My knowledge obviously is limited, is very limited to none on this. What are my thoughts? I think it would be foolish to think that Vietnam have forgotten about their past, and I think Vietnam would want to keep their options open rather than cut off from Russia, if at all possible, and just continue to make the most out of all the superpowers they possibly can. I think that's kind of where I see them in this position. Interesting that they have they're having quite a summit. But it'll be interesting to hear what Biden will have to say. Obviously, I won't be able to watch it initially, but it'll be interesting to hear what Joe Biden would have to say there and what discussions they would have with Vietnam's leader. That is for sure. But the last story we have on here, guys, is from NBC News. Obviously, they're very, very... this one is about the January 6th riot of January 6th. So this is our last news coverage, last news story of the day, guys. Gas Hat, the January 6th rioter who first breached the Capitol turns entrance, has been arrested by the FBI. Gregory Moraes, whose federal authorities set off a battle between law enforcement and the Lower West Tunnel, was identified with the help of online sleuths. The man who faced federal authorities said set off a brutal battle with police at the Lower West Tunnel of the US Capitol on January the 6th was arrested on Friday, nearly 2 years after he was identified by online sleuths. Gregory Moraes was identified by online Sudan hunters in 2021, and FBI affiliates said the Bureau received a tip in October 2021 and then interviewed Moraes in March 2023. Moraes was arrested in Crown Point, Indiana on Friday, according to the court records, charged with felony civil disorder along with 2 misdemeanor charges. So here you can see in the picture there, a man in a gas mask faced off with police on January the 6th, 2021 at the US Capitol there. Video footage shows Moraes was the first rioter to enter the Capitol through the Lower West Terrace doors on January 6, 2021. The Lower West Terrace was the site of some of the worst violence at the Capitol that day. Several police officers sustained major injuries, and rioter Roseanne Bollard died amid the chaos. Moraes earned the nickname Gas Hat because of footage showing him wearing his gas mask like a hat during the part of the battle inside the tunnel. There is a picture of him again facing off with police at the Capitol. The FBI adjutant states Moraes told the Bureau that he rented a car in Indiana, drove to DC with a friend, and stayed in the Airbnb in Virginia. Moraes then said admitted to entering the Capitol grounds wearing a gas mask, seeing law enforcement launch tear gas into the crowd, and getting into altercations with police officers both outside and inside the tunnel. There's video footage here. I don't know if I really want to play it. I'm going to mute it just in case, but oh, doesn't look like it's going to play. Yeah, it's you can see they're holding the line there. It's about 2 minutes long. Yeah, so if I push it a bit more forward, you can start to see. It's not good. Better not play anymore. We don't want violence on the yeah, better not play it just for our sake. The FBI said Myers held up his middle finger at officers before he opened the door that had been broken by rioters, and confronted police before he began to physically fight officers. Online sleuths that were unable to identify Moraes with the help of a photo posted by a journalist that showed him posing near the Capitol after the attacks when he was not wearing a mask. This man breached the US Capitol building earlier. He was pepper sprayed by police and he didn't damage anything but followed others who did, says Catherine Disk on X. The FBI has arrested more than 1,100 people in connection with the attack on the US Capitol. More than 600 have been sentenced, including more than 370 defendants to periods of the incarnation and more than 122 periods of home detention. The Department of Justice resolves to hold accountable to those who committed crimes on January 6, 2021 was not and will not wane, the US Attorney Office said in a statement this week. It's going to be a long time before everybody is convicted of everybody's held accountable for their actions there. Obviously we talk about
the crimes that President Donald Trump is responsible for, but let's not forget the people who actually went in and actually caused the damage, the individuals there who assaulted and attacked officers, who destroyed property and ran their way through. Yes, of course, they are not solely responsible. The blame lies mainly on the words of President Trump and the case of him allegedly incinerating the violence on the day. But it doesn't mean to say that the people who caused this shouldn't be held to account for their actions as well. They need to be held accountable for them, and this man is no different. It will be interesting to see how things progress as things go, guys. So what did you make of the news round? We've hit about 15 minutes in. I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of it. What you think of the format. Should I change it up, switch it up a bit? It's more of a first episode, so obviously sometimes things don't always go the way I've kind of wanted to, but I'm interested to hear your feedback on it for sure. So we covered a bit in Ukraine, we've covered stuff in Africa. Didn't really cover anything specific in Asia. I suppose one story connecting America and Vietnam, to be fair. There was one story about Kim Jong-un celebrating I think some kind of parade, but I didn't think it was worthy of talking about, to be fair. But we'll probably try and cover something maybe next week with regards to something over in Asia, because there's always something going on there as well. There's always news going on in the world, guys. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. Thank you very much for watching. Like, share and subscribe as always, guys, and I will catch you all very, very soon.